Welcome back to Uncovered. Today we are super excited to talk about a topic that we haven't talked about for a little bit, which is pregnancy.
Pole and pregnancy.
Yes, pole and pregnancy, of course. Everything we talk about is related to pole. We do have a very special guest on. Her name is Phoebe. She's from Bump Fitness. Is that? Yeah. I was like, hang on a second. I just got to double check. And she's also a co-owner of RockFit, a pole studio down the Gold Coast.
And also, what would they call you? A tutor, a teacher in the new Pole Mama Society? What is that label?
An expert? I don't know if they're advisor, expert, I guess.
Well, we just gave you a
Women's
label.
Health professional.
I deliver some of the content, so I guess I'm an instructor as well. Yeah, let's just run with that.
Let's roll with that.
So today, guys, we are going to talk all about pole and pregnancy. Phoebe has, been a part of this amazing course come out called Pole Mamas. I think it's just been released. The pre-sale has just opened as we speak now.
Mm-hmm. So we'll link that all below.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really, really, groundbreaking for the pole world to get some of this knowledge and theory in. And I think it'll benefit so many people. So this episode is going to have a lot of great content for you guys. So we might just start by asking Phoebe a little bit about her background as a health professional. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as I was saying before, I did come from corporate, so a completely different field, but I just felt like I was selling air basically and not contributing to society. So I went and retrained and I wanted to do physio, but I didn't have the mark. So I went into sports science and made sure I did really well on that. So I could then do a postgrad in physio. And then I sort of I specialised more in rehab, but I was the only female working in my company at the time. So I was sent all the women's health clients, which we don't learn about in physio. You don't have that specialty because there's so much into it. So I went and retrained in women's health. So it's been a long educational journey, but I'm here. And I originally started Bump Fitness just as a prenatal, postnatal Pilates sort of side hustle. And then it just morphed into now it's my own company and I see women's health clients and I have a very niche market of pole dancers and aerialists specifically around pregnancy and postnatal.
I have a question about the women's health. Is that like a whole nother like post-grad? Like is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
There is a lot in it, and I've talked about it before. I think on the I've definitely talked about it, whether it's here or somewhere else. But yeah, there's just not the research into women from a health perspective. Just isn't as detailed.
It's only 50% of the population. So.
only.
But in my physio course, and there was so much because you have to cover musculoskeletal and cardiovascular and everything. So I think there was maybe one slide on like pelvic floor, and that's the pelvic floor, and like let's move on. So and it does take years. Like I'm still learning about women's health, and I've really just specialised on in pre and postnatal. But you can go into breast cancer and there's so much. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to put my little feminist side away before I get on a high horse about women's health.
It's changing though. There's much more.
It's so good. It's good to see that we have specialists in those areas now too.
And it goes to show as well that, you don't just want to go to any old like GP. If you have an issue, like you might need to seek out a specialist because not everyone is trained with that sort of knowledge as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always good. We've talked about this before, having like good relationships with GPs, but knowing when it is time to be like, you need to refer me to somebody else as well is important. So anyway, back on track, back on all things pregnancies.
So when you first started being a physio, were you also a pole dancer?
Yes. So I started pole in 2005. Back in Sydney.
You're a veteran.
Yeah. And I started in someone's basement. So I don't know if you know Pole Athletica in Sydney. It was Studio Verve. So she started out in her garage with one pole, and there was only bobbies at the time, and then there was pole stars, which were in they were in clubs, I think. So they would come in and like put the poles up, and the ground was really dirty, and it was like so anyway, so I learned in a garage, and then that turned into a studio, and then I moved up here 2012. So I've been poling for a long time.
What was your first studio in Brisbane? Or Gold Coast, Queensland?
Susie Q. When she moved up here.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
A little throwback.
Yeah.
And so then when did your business, I guess, get really niche into the pole and aerial? So I guess like we were talking to Simone, the pole physio, and she said, she was just started out as a physio. And then when she started pole and she was like, oh my gosh, there is just so much here. And then everyone started coming to her, and all of a sudden now she's just like, was an expert in that sort of field.
Probably as soon as I started.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, physio.
I'm in the pole world. So I would just get sent, women all the time. So I just, studied, and I keep doing professional development and keep honing my my skills. So, yeah.
Have you really seen, I think we can see the boom of pole mamas at the moment, but
definitely.
Have you seen more of an increase now?
Yes.
Like in the last, since COVID, everyone having their COVID
definitely,
babies?
Myself included.
I am one of those.
So I was in the hospital, I'd just given birth, and I've got emails coming through, can you come and see me?
Cool, let me just deal with my stuff.
How much time did you have off then? Because we were talking off air before about Phoebe seeing someone that I was training, and she was super, super pregnant. My
second baby came. He was overdue, so I stopped working at 38 weeks because he was so massive, and I'm like, surely he's got to come out.
He's got to be here soon.
But he was born at 42 weeks, so I had a month off. And then he had some health issues, so we were in hospital for a little bit, but I was doing emails when I was in NICU,
this is going to be me.
It is. I'm like, I can see this.
I have issues, but but then I came back at probably week 5, which I shouldn't have. I should have waited till week 6, but I knew my body. I gave myself clearance.
Can you do that?
No. But no, I started very gently. I had other people working for me, so I would sort of, I was just the voice, and they would physically do my things for me. I had maybe 2 months off.
How long until you came back to pole?
Second time round was longer because I did have a very large baby, so it was a lot more of a recovery. I want to say I started doing some stuff about 4 months post. Okay. Yeah, I would go into the studio and try doing something but it was so hard. So I really, this time around, focus a bit more on Pilates and rehab, and then I think I started about 4 months. And when I got back, I thought, there is no way I'm ever going to go upside down again. I just feel so broken.
Wow.
But it just, I just listened to my body and trained when I could train, and, with 2 kids.
Yeah.
But I just
2 kids, 2 businesses.
Yeah, exactly. I just did a show on Friday. So I'm back to not 100% my level, but back to show performing level.
How old's your little one now, littlest?
He will be 1 next week.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And you also performed at Miss Pole Dance Queensland as well.
He was in the back room.
Oh, yeah.
I do remember walking away from, of course, the bar and seeing you with your bum, and I'm like,
I was in the back.
She's committed.
He was so illegal because they're like, he's not allowed in here. It's an 18. I'm like, oh, that's okay.
He's less than
where the hell am I going to put him?
Yeah, I have a baby here. What do you do? We just leave him on the street?
Yeah, so he was in the back room, and because I didn't know any of the performers, or the competitors, so I just set him up with his iPad. I'm like, I'll be back in 5 minutes. He was in his prep. He didn't even notice I was gone. So
I love it. That's so good.
That's amazing.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly.
There were people there. He was not 100% on his own. But
and also, guys, I want to highlight as well is that I guess one of the points of our podcast today is to show that being a mum doesn't necessarily get in the way of pole. You still have a pole life, and because for some people it's obviously they think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to pole again, or it's a huge change. Yes, it is a huge change, but we want to show that there's so many people out there doing it now, people that are just students, people instructors, owning businesses, that you can keep pursuing with pole as well.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of people that we speak to who are who are like in the studio, they're like, oh, like, yeah, like I want to have a baby, but I want to do this competition and I want to do this. And like, oh, maybe it's just not the right time to have a baby. It's never the right time, I assume. And it's just like, you just have to make a decision on what you value at this point in your life or this season that you're in. But yeah, now our studio has a mums and bubs, and that's really highlighted the importance of getting back and doing some physical activity, and they can obviously bring their children with them. But I think everybody is different, and it's okay if you're not ready to come back. But if you're worried about having a baby and how it might impact your pole journey, I think it's just mentally preparing yourself for that.
Oh, definitely. And I think if you educate yourself in what happens to you during your pregnancy and afterwards, you can manage yourself and obviously align yourself with good practitioners, like get a women's health physio, you know, get a GP that you trust, and, you know, you can make a plan and return and
So ideally, should you be making that plan before you start trying, while you're trying, or as soon as you're pregnant? Like, when should this plan start?
I would start maybe.
Sorry, I'm like that. That's a little bit of a like probably it depends on the person question.
Yeah, it really depends on whether you have any underlying health conditions, and some people don't know that they do. Like, so probably start before. You know, find a women's health physio in your area, or even, you know, I do telehealth. So if I do, I mean, I did one for a lady who was in the UK. So she just had no health practitioners around her that knew pole. So we did a Zoom call. So you can do it that way.
Awesome. Thank you, COVID. Like, you brought some good things to our lives.
So I would start with that and just make sure that if you do have any, you know, pelvic floor dysfunction that you aren't aware of, that's being addressed. I also recommend everyone learn how to do pelvic floor exercises and also how to relax their pelvic floor. So some people have overactive pelvic floors, so they need to do some down training rather than training.
Interesting.
And
do you find that common in pole dancers?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it because we like do it like, I'm just making a couple of assumptions here, but like engaging our core and all that and being so tense in some of the movements? Is it like, because we train it without realizing?
Possibly, yeah. And it's also just an irregular pattern. So some people who are like highly anxious or stressed also have overactive pelvic floors as well. So
what is the implications, or what does an overactive pelvic floor do then?
It can have a few issues. So it can create some issues with opening your bladder and bowels, painful sex, can cause some hip and low back pain. So
interesting.
So some people do have back pain and it's actually their pelvic floor. So
I was thinking, because it's kind of like some people, how they're like clenching their jaw, and sometimes I do that as well. Like when
do you know what some and I don't know the research on this, but if you have an overactive like jaw muscles, it can somehow relate to your pelvic floor. So
I need to get checked.
Renee's face right now.
Yes. No, I just realized sometimes I do find that it depends on it's like very rare, but I find that I'm like, oh, I'm just like really tense in my jaw, like, or I'm really, not necessarily if I feel anxious, but if I'm like, maybe if I'm concentrated or something like that. So yeah, interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting we're pole dancers and we're starting our planning journey, seeing health physios. What happens now that we're like pregnant? What should we do? Like, one of the common myths is like, keep doing what you're doing. Is that right? Is that wrong? I know the answer is going to be it depends, but like generally speaking.
Yeah, generally speaking, if you're already pole dancing before you fall pregnant, you can continue. Yeah. So as long as you haven't had a big break, like a year off, you can keep going. But obviously you're going to need to modify things. So in the first trimester, people feel quite sick. So you might take some time off there. That's fine. Or you might just do some modified classes as you feel well. Second trimester, most people feel quite good. And then moving into the third trimester, you just got this big belly in the way, and that's when you start to get some back pain and pelvic pain. So that's when you need to start modifying some of the movements. But obviously you're not going to be doing drop splits and laying on your belly. So you do need to modify your movement. So I would be booking in with a women's health physio just to just know what you can and can't do, basically. Just make a plan for yourself, because some people can split. Like I was still teaching a flexibility class with this huge belly, and it was fine for me, but for some people just walking hurts their hips, so they won't be doing some flexibility. So it is a case by case.
And I guess that gives you, if you're seeing somebody and you're understanding what your body is sort of capable, gives you that ease of mind to continue your pole journey without going, oh, shouldn't I? Like what should I be doing here?
I guess there are some things that are definite no's, like even in the first trimester, no drops, no splits, no fongies, or anything
like dynamic or high impact.
Yeah, I'd be taking out dynamic, because there is a part in your first trimester where your baby implants, and so you don't want to affect that at all, and possibly cause a miscarriage. So
what does implant mean?
So they're implanting into your uterus.
Oh, okay.
Wall. Yeah, so
interesting.
So you want that to attach, the placenta to attach properly.
Okay. And so the dynamic stuff can inhibit
shake
that.
it. It's sort of like that whiplash kind of can affect your brain. It's the same thing with baby.
So I guess like understanding when an implantation happens, and that's before you know you're pregnant, generally speaking.
Yeah, it's usually around 7, 8 weeks. So some people don't know.
Yeah. So you probably, if you're planning, you're probably safe to in those times, if you know your cycle pretty well. And I think I'm assuming I don't know if assumption's the right word, but like if you're trying, you're looking at everything and you're going, okay, where does my cycle sit? When should I be having sex? When should these things be happening? I guess if you're trying and you know that, you need to understand your cycle to be able to help you judge when to not use those things or do those things. So maybe you should just stay away from them. I'm dribbling.
No, that totally makes sense. And like if you're trying, it's probably the time to be taking those things out. Like I don't want to dictate anyone's whole journey or pregnancy journey, but I would be recommending that those things are probably, you can focus on other stuff. Like you can still do, like stuff. If you want to do deadlifts, like, or whatever you want to do. Yeah, you can still do those things. Like I could still INX later in my pregnancy because I'm using my obliques. Could not do a chair spin because I couldn't bring my knees up.
I think that's the biggest thing we've learned through all these people having babies in pole is like when you return, it's just not straightforward. It's not like you just progress like this. You might still be able to handspring but not be able to invert.
I was going to say we've been talking a lot about the pole journey for people like I guess before like never being pregnant, and what is classed as an advanced move, what's classed as an intermediate move, and then you change it to when someone comes back, and we have a lot of people like going through the mums and bubs or coming back into our classes after having a baby, and those pathways in our curriculum is not really super suited to them because they could go upside down, do like a butterfly or a handspring, but then they can't just do like the inverts itself is like really hard, or like you said, chair spin is really difficult. So is there should people that have been coming back after pregnancy, should they be doing more so like specialized stuff, more so like private lessons to cater to them, or do you reckon that they're would be good to get back into the normal swing of things?
If they're seeing someone, like if they have a good practitioner that can kind of guide them, and then if they're educated, then it's fine, because those mums and bubs groups are so good for the mental health that you don't want to just keep your postnatal woman isolated.
Yeah, true.
You want them to chat to the other mums about like baby poo and just stuff that's, which is so relevant.
And it's probably, just feeling a part of a community is so important at that stage.
Yeah. So, and everyone's so different. Like, I mean, I came from a high level pole background, but I really struggled in my second pregnancy to come back. Whereas other people who, were beginner level could do more than me. Like it just is so individual, and as long as they can listen to their body, and most pole dancers are pretty in tune with their body.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So what are some common concerns for women after having bub? Like they want to get back to pole. Like what are some things that might slow them getting back into their journey?
Probably pelvic floor dysfunction, which usually they're not aware of. Most people come to me because they're scared about the ab separation.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about ab separation being
so
talked
I can
about.
talk about ages about that. But anyway,
whole episode.
Yeah. But pelvic floor dysfunction is sort of an umbrella term that encompasses, like, it can be incontinence with their bladder or bowels. It can be that overactive pelvic floor. But the most common one I probably see is urinary incontinence. Because of what we do in pole, it creates this this intra-abdominal pressure within, your abdominal cavity. So think about, like, if you squeezed a balloon, the balloon parts have got to go somewhere, and they go to our weakest link. So for people who have just had a baby, it's usually their pelvic floor and their ab separation to some point, and sometimes their low back, but mostly it's their pelvic floor. So we need to give your pelvic floor enough time to heal, and it does take up to 12 months. So like usually by about 6 months I feel back to normal, but I do say it can be up to 12 months.
So then, because we've wrote down sorry, a bunch of like myths, like pregnancy myths, and one of them is like, is it normal to like be peeing your pants a little bit after having a child? Because I know, like, I've taught women who have children who are 10, 12 years old, and they're like, Renee, don't make us jump because we'll pee our pants. And, when I was first an instructor, I had no idea about anything, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, like that's normal. But then I've since heard, like, that's not, like, it's not a normal thing.
It's
like,
common, but it's not normal.
Yes.
And it's because, like, I would love to change the postnatal healthcare system. Like in France, I think they still do it, but other countries in the world, they have a program that's like their equivalent of Medicare, subsidised, so that women can heal their pelvic floor and they can heal their bodies with healthcare professionals. But I see a lot of women who are like, I didn't even know women's health physio existed. I didn't even know what they did. So they just suffer with it. So I would love to somehow change that so that there is like not mandatory, but like there is that option for people so that they know, like, in the hospital, here's your like discharge pack. This is your appointment. Like, you have an appointment with your midwife. They just call you and they're like, I'm coming over. And you're like half asleep. You're like, whatever. I don't have any clothes on. Covered in baby spew. Like, I think that you also need to be sent out a women's health physio so that they can do some education, and some healing. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, and I know my physio a little while ago, well, not my current physio, a different physio, she said to me, she's like, Steph, like, if you're thinking that children are going to be in your future, she's like, I think you need to do some research because of the sport you do, because of how petite your body is. She's like, you might actually be better with a C-section rather than having a vaginal birth, because if you have a vaginal birth and it tears, it's quite a she said her words to me, and I don't know if these are how correct these are, but this is her words to me. She's like, they don't necessarily heal it the same, like stitch it the same, unless it's a grade 4 tear, like a front to back tear. So she's like, you might struggle because that might cause you issues later on. Sorry to throw you that curve.
No, that's all right. The tearing's not like most people will tear. It's more and it's not even the vaginal birth. Just being pregnant puts a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor. So it's more the risk of prolapse that can cause issues with your bladder and bowels that can be then long term. Most people will tear, and they're getting better. So if you have a grade 1 or grade 2 tear, they'll stitch it. They stitch it anyway.
Okay.
And that usually doesn't cause any issues. When it's a grade 3, 4, that's when it goes down from like front to back. So that's when it's affecting your anal canal. And then if that happens, you're straight into surgery to fix that. So you're separated from your baby, but you need to, because if you don't fix it then and there, you can be fecal incontinent for the rest of your life.
I've heard some, like, I listened to a podcast called Ladies We Need to Talk. It's by ABC and it's great, but they had like birth horror stories one. And
don't listen to them if you're planning.
No, see, I had to have wrist surgery a couple of years ago, and I YouTubed the wrist surgery because I wanted to see what it looked like before I went in.
Okay.
I'm one of those people. I need to know everything. She's like, yeah, you're a little weird. That's okay. I like to be prepared.
Yeah, that's all right. That's fine.
But this one was like, it's creates they didn't realize that there was a tear that she had between her anal cavity and her vaginal cavity, and then it was obviously fecal matter was coming through her vagina rather than out through her anal.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like there was like some interesting stories. And I needed to know because I needed to be prepared for these things if they ever happen.
Yeah.
To be like,
So
have you checked my shit? Like, is everything okay?
You can get a check before. So that's maybe one of the ones you could check. Like before you get pregnant, you can measure the perineal body, so the bit between your vagina and anus. And if it's shorter than 2 centimeters, I usually recommend to look into C-section because of the risk of it tearing. Yep. If it's longer than that, then you've got a bit more room to play with. But the other thing is if you want to have a vaginal birth, like a lot of people want to experience us and birth that, you can opt for an episiotomy so that they cut you sideways so that you tear sideways and not down. So that's an option as well.
Interesting.
And it's good because they give you a local, so you actually don't feel it.
Interesting.
You don't feel the birth.
I feel this super painful.
Yeah.
Everyone's like going to go home and like measure now the 2
It's so to do on your own.
I was like, I'm just interested.
Hey, I fully recommend you get mirrors out and have a look at what's normal because when you get pregnant and afterwards, it's not.
You'd be like, did this look like this beforehand?
They say that all the time. Like even as a teenager, like that's like advice I think that was given to me maybe from my mum. My mum's pretty open. She's like, you need to know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's great advice.
You need to know where your shit is. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Yeah.
No, and we've talked about a lot, especially our first few podcasts that we did, especially the what was that one, the fanny farts and the all the
was that
embarrassing,
the unglamorous
life of Pol, and we're just like said from the start, we're like everything goes here, especially this podcast. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to normalize it, because so many times people come in and they're like, oh no, like that, we never talked about that with our family. And Steph's definitely a lot more open than me because my family weren't as open about that sort of stuff. But now being around everyone and being around some of the women at the gym, at the first gym, the old moles that that I went to, we're just like, I was like, wow, I didn't know that even happened to my body. And it wasn't even to do with age. It was just in general. And I was like, I've learned so much and how much is normalized. Now I'm like, wow. And now, so I'm trying to talk more openly about it. So other women are kind of like, oh, okay. That's okay to talk about.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it makes people feel better,
Yeah. And things aren't as embarrassing. If something happens, it's like, it's not that embarrassing. It's probably worse has happened to other people before. Yeah. Well, your issues are not that bad.
No, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. Where were we?
Yeah, so actually, why don't we start talking, because we're talking about returning after as well. So obviously getting checked out to see everything is working and everything is okay, getting back into it. I guess we want to talk a little bit about the mental side of things. So physically, you might be clear. It's like, okay, you can start back here. We've talked a lot about, especially with our mums and bubs girls, about how mentally hard it can be getting back into it as well. So is that something that you would think that either through friends or to see someone as well to address that side? Because it's not only the physical side, but then the mental side of how your body changes after.
Oh, definitely. I always tell my new mums to be that just expect on day 3 that you're going to be very sad. Yeah. It's called baby blues. You have this massive drop in hormones, and for some people it's just a day. But I just pre-warn them that you're going to need some help and some extra cuddles on that day, and to pre-warn the partner as well. So because my husband, my first, was like, oh my God, you have postnatal depression. I'm going to have to get you a psych. He's just full on. I'm like, no, it's just my eyes are leaking and I'm a bit sad. My
eyes are leaking, I'm a bit sad.
I just don't
everything's leaking.
That is so true. But for some people that continues, and that's where it goes down the path of postnatal depression. So have a look at, there's some great websites like Beyond Blue and Cope. They list the traits of postnatal depression, and honestly, every woman that I've seen has at least some of them. So I think most people I've seen have had some form of postnatal depression. It's not just being sad, it's being a bit numb, it's not connecting with your baby. it's being irritable, and there's still that risk of postnatal depression and postnatal psychosis as well in that first 12 months. So there's an awesome, do you know Louis Theroux, who does he does like a docu-series like just on random stuff. So one of them he did was in it was in the UK, and it was a ward for postnatal women who have postnatal depression, postnatal psychosis, and you should watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
Just these women who like have it all. They've like
journeys and stuff.
Yeah, and just something flicks in their brain. It's like a hormonal, switch, and then they just they need help. Yeah.
So what is the difference between postnatal depression and postnatal psychosis?
Psychosis is, I'd have to look up the actual definition, but they don't know usually where they are, their risk of harming themselves or harming their baby. They just completely, it's like they've had a concussion almost. They just don't know where they are or how to care for themselves or their babies. Whereas postnatal depression is a bit more like feeling numb, feeling sad, and those feelings not going away.
And then is there postnatal anxiety as well?
Yes. Yeah. And there's also perinatal, so during your pregnancy as well. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yes. And I think
so. There's pre, peri, and post. Is that the three mains, or would there be a pre?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I was trying to get around the terminology.
all the words.
Prenatal anxieties, like during, and then
okay. Yeah.
So I guess as you're returning, you have all these all these factors to look to. What is, I guess, even getting back on the pole, it's going to be a mental battle, regardless of the mental battle that you might be having at home, just coming to that realization of how much strength you've lost. Like, do you see girls at that point in their journeys who are just like, I don't know what to do because I can't even lift myself up on the pole?
Yeah, I do. But I just see, I mainly see women who come out and they're like, yay, I'm baby free. So they're usually pretty happy. It's more the people who have come from like a high end or performing that come back in, and then that shift in strength. But I just give them reassurance that you might feel like you can't do it now, and you might feel that the road is really long, but you do develop the strength quicker. Like, so you're not starting from scratch again. Yeah. It will, you'll feel like this, and then your strength will just snowball, and you'll get the strength back. So, it can be a bit of a mental challenge, but usually I find people who've come back to pole are happy.
Just because they've got some baby free time.
And they feel more like themselves, like it's something for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't really care that they can't invert
because it'd be a whole identity thing too, to be like, cool, now I'm a mum, so I've got this attachment to me, and now like I have to deal with this, and at least when I'm at pole I can be me, and I can be that person that I want to be in that space. Yeah.
So would you say that your bodies are changing, like, because what I've heard a lot is, a lot of the mindset now is not like, I want to get my pre-baby body back. It's like, now this is my new body and I want to work with it, from now on. Would you say that like that's kind of true in terms of your body changes and it's changed forever? And not necessarily, and this is no positive or negative sort of attachments towards it, but would you have to be mindful regardless of how postnatal you are? Like, so say for someone that might have like a 1-2-year-old at the moment and going, oh shit, I never did anything after, I just kind of looked after my baby. I want to get back into pole now. How would they get back into after like maybe 2 years? Because our women that have just given birth and they're like, okay, we want to get back with, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and then we're going to sort of start getting back into it. But what about the people that are like 2 years postpartum?
Obviously, like it's a case by case, but sometimes the people who have a bit more of a rest and then come back to it are better than the people who go straight back into it and go maybe a little bit too hard, because you do need that 6 to 12 months for your pelvic floor to heal. So as long as you're doing some pelvic floor exercises and seeing someone to give you a program, if you have a year off pole, it's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of regaining that strength, because you are lifting your baby, and your baby's getting
true.
heavier and heavier. So you might have a 10 kilo baby or a 15 kilo baby at 1 year post.
Yeah. And that's like weights, probably more
Oh my
weights
God,
than you were doing before.
My biceps are so strong now.
So I guess people don't have to freak out about, okay, I've had my baby, I need to just like get fit again.
No, definitely not. I would even say go slow. Like most of the pole dancers I see, I need to slow them down rather than speed them up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You started touching on it before though, Renee, like your body changes.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest changes to your body? Like my first thoughts is my hips are going to change to prepare, or are hips already in a position to prepare for childbirth?
Is this during the pregnancy or after?
Great question. Just in general.
Okay. Well, during pregnancy,
I like great question. I don't know.
During your pregnancy, your body produces hormones, so it relaxes soft tissue and your connective tissue. So your abs are going to separate. Yes, they are. Your pelvis will separate to allow the baby to come through. Your ribs are going to separate. Your feet separate. Like just pretty much your whole body is going to be softer. Doesn't mean that you're going to be like this blob. Like you're a bit more malleable. So you might roll your ankle a bit more, or so your pelvis can be a bit unstable, and everyone is totally different. So some people might be a bit more unstable than others. I have big babies, like mine were huge, and my pelvis was fine. Like, so I guess I didn't have much of that hormones. But other people really struggle. Like I've had some people on crutches, like because of their hips. So yes, your body does change, but then after you have your baby, it generally comes back. Okay. So your ribs will stay a bit wider. So some people notice that their bra size might go up because of that around there.
The band,
and their feet might be a bit wider. So their like skinnier shoes might be a bit tighter. But yeah.
I had a student at one of the studios that she's had 3 kids now, and after each kid she's come back more flexible.
Yeah.
So she could never do the splits, and then after her first kid, like she was like, wow, something happened to my hips, and now they're like, she's so flexy, and especially upside down. And then after a third one, and she's just like a totally different person, and she's like, I can't believe how much it changed.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, like that could happen. And I've seen recently, which we'll talk about soon, one of the things that the Pole Mamas Society has shared is about the flexibility and about how to stretch when you are pregnant, because you've got to be careful that you are going to be have, like you said, the softer sort of body. I like that explanation of it. So you have to not push yourself and not do those crazy stretches like you would if you weren't pregnant.
Yeah, you've really got to listen to your body. And if you are going into those stretches like deep lunges and splits, if you feel any pain, can I bring my pelvis out?
Yes.
YouTube people?
Yes. Well, yeah, if you're on YouTube, we've got props, guys. And if you're not, you know where you need to go.
All right. So I have my pelvis here. If I bring it closer.
Love it.
All right.
Oh, this is amazing.
I went to the coffee shop and I was holding my pelvis because I had to go and see someone, and I like popped it down on the table and I was like ordering coffee, and she's looking at it like
yeah, I like to hold my pelvis.
You're like, this is my husband's.
All right. So at the front of your pelvis here is called your pubic symphysis. And so this can separate, and if it shears, so I'm going to... Sorry.
Oh, that is for
There's
those
my Maltese.
Yes, we also brought snacks.
I have chocolate everywhere. So this can kind of shear back and forth when that shifts open a little bit, or stretches open a little bit, and it causes inflammation through there. So it can kind of rub or separate, or it can drop or rotate. And so people can feel some pain, and it'll be right just above the just above your vagina, so you'll feel it right in there.
Right, both those like hands down, like where is that?
You can fit, if you feel that bony part, like you'll feel like a little ridge between the bony part, and that's your pubic symphysis. So there we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a lot of muscles come and attach here. So your abs come and attach here, and then your inner thighs come and attach here as well.
Wow.
So you've got a lot of stuff pulling pulling.
I've also heard that like in birth, or I don't know if it's birth or pregnancy, that they can actually snap off your pelvic bone.
The pubic symphysis or the
muscles can come away from them.
Oh, in birth.
I don't know if it was birth or pregnancy, but yeah, I've heard somewhere that it can. Maybe it was the trauma episode I listened to.
Oh dear, you need to stop listening to these because that's not common. I have never had a woman say my muscles snapped off my bone.
Sorry,
I think that must have been an anomaly. So everybody out there who's listening, that
I'm gonna have to find it now.
Oh my God,
I was like, we need
everyone.
to get some backing, scientific backing to what Steph is saying, because at the moment she's lying. I was like, we have a women's health specialist here.
That's what I was asking, because this is what I heard.
Okay.
So,
well, I guess you can. I mean, there's muscle avulsions can happen at any time. You know, you've just got to create that load that's too much for your muscles.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on what are they doing in birth. Like, what are they?
pretty sure it was the pregnancy one I was doing.
What are they doing in pregnancy? Like, maybe they're being silly. So we're not silly.
No, we're smart.
What's the best way to give birth? Because there's not a lot of space here.
Well, hang on. I've got to finish the other bit. Bringing it back, guys. Okay. So if you turn your pelvis around, then you've got two more joins down the side there. So down, like, this is your coccyx bone. This is called your sacrum. So you have two more joins down there, and they can also do the same thing. So they separate and they can shear. So in your birth, your hips will be a little bit wider, and different positions can help to open up the pelvis. Being on your hands and knees, or even like hands up on like the side of something, so you're like kneeling, that can open up your pelvis. They say being on your back closes your pelvis, but having said that, I could not relax in my pregnancies in the technical way that you're supposed to, or the best way. And so I gave birth on my back for both my boys. So,
and you felt that was more comfortable for you?
Yeah, I couldn't relax my legs. I couldn't relax anything to just push.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I had to be on my back, and I was like holding onto the bed and like pushing, I think, on the midwife and my husband with my legs, like, you know. Anyway, what was the other question? Oh, and so in birth, there's a thing called rhombus michaelis, which I didn't know until my second birth. So this sacrum and the lower spine actually come out this way, and these separate this way. So why it's called rhombus of Michaelis is because these structures here, when they push back, they essentially, I don't want to say dislocate because it sounds bad, but they like really stretch out and open up, and it's a natural part of birth. And so
how crazy are our bodies,
right? And it just goes straight back in. So there is one picture on the internet floating around of rhombus and Michaelis, and my midwife said I had a really big one because my second boy is really big. I'm like, did you take a photo? Like, she's like, I thought it was inappropriate. I'm like,
you're like, I would love to have seen it.
Yeah, I would have shared it to everyone. But anyway, so your body will naturally open up. You can go into positions that will make it better, but you know, you got to listen to your body in birth. And
how long does so baby now out? Does your body just go back together?
I guess it did. I don't know. I wasn't really focusing on it. I assume it does. I guess once that pressure is gone and the hormones, you know, like I, you know, I could walk afterwards. So I'm assuming
this is true.
Yeah. I guess it's like this sort of stuff with the bones and whatnot would come back pretty quickly, and it's all the muscle stuff, like you said, the pelvic floor and the ab separation, which take the time to then be able to come back to more of a normal, your new normal. Yeah.
And with the ab separation, you do need to, it's no room for my pelvis now.
You can keep your pelvis there.
You do have a 4-month window. So in that 4 months postnatal is when you have those stretchy hormones. So your body's malleable. So you can basically set it to where you want it to be long term. Once you go past that 4 months, you're essentially fused where you are in terms of your core, your ab separation. So if you do have ab separation, it's not a big deal. Like aesthetically, people are affected by it, and if you have a very big one, it can affect your pole. But you do have that 4-month window to fix it. So if you want to fix it, get it done, get it seen to.
And so how do you fix it? Through exercises?
In the first 8 weeks, it self heals.
Yeah.
And Western culture's finally cottoned on to belly binding. So it's I have more props.
Oh yes. Belly binding.
I like
So
this episode's just full of like information and surprises.
So belly binding is basically compression around your midsection. So Asian cultures, I had a Serbian lady. She's like, oh yeah, we do belly binding. So it's basically like just this big corset that you wear around your midsection. So for the first 8 weeks, it just helps your abs heal, and it stops that. You know how I said ballooning before?
Yeah.
Like if you squeeze a balloon, your weak link can kind of come through the middle of your ab separation, so it keeps separating it. So having that belly binding just stops it from ballooning out because
While
you
it's
can't.
healing.
Yeah, picking up your baby and bending and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to like keep it
That's good.
together.
So regardless of how big your separation is belly binding a good thing, or is it
Yes.
more okay?
Yeah. So this is one of my go-to products. So if you are a pole dancer, or anyone really, I recommend one of these. I've tried them all. So basically this is like a nice stretchy wrap, but it's quite compressive, and it's got lots of wings, so you can use it during your pregnancy and keep everything tucked in, and then when you have your baby you can pull it tight to wherever you need, because after you have your baby your uterus is still big and it shrinks back, so your belly's going to change shape, so you can change this to change your shape. And this is TGA approved, so it's a medical compression.
That's so good.
So is it okay if you've had a C-section?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you definitely want to have some compression over that scar too, because that will be one of your weak links.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So if you had one baby and then you had this ab separation and you didn't quite address it, if you have another one,
Yes.
is that a second opportunity to then?
That's one of I'm like, well, you missed your window, but you could get pregnant again.
And then you could deal with it then. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how your body works like that. So much stuff I did not even know.
After the 4 months, you're not like a lost
Yeah.
cause. Like
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
still
yeah.
do stuff, but it's just easier.
There's still hope.
Yeah, there's still hope. Or you can just get pregnant again.
If you want to have them close together.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Should we quickly talk about the Pole Mamas, then the course that you've been
Yeah.
involved in, and,
Yeah.
and what that's sort of about, and how people can get involved
We
with
want
it?
all the details because it's all over our Instagram.
Oh, yeah. So basically it's the brainchild of Ali, Jane and Lisa D. So they run Pulsephere. And I guess with the COVID baby boom, they realised that there is a need for pulse-specific education for people because, you know, as I said before, I'm taking calls from like UK. I don't know if I said it before or after. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of like telehealth for people who don't have a women's health physio who understands pole. So, and I think knowledge is so powerful. So basically they've created this program or course with different modules and videos on educating you on your anatomy and your physiology going through your pregnancy, but also postnatally, and making it really pole specific as well.
good.
And there's watch and follow, you know, Pilates videos that you know, safe for you to do at home as long as you have that medical clearance, obviously. And it's just such a robust, they've done such a good job with it. So it's not just myself, it's the pole physio, Simone and Julia. So we do more of the physio women's health aspect, and there's also a clinical psychologist and a dietitian as well. So yeah, it's a really holistic approach to it's amazing. It's and world first.
And I guess like you were saying, it's like more so like all that education and knowledge, so that then if people were then to come to you, if they've sort of done that, they kind of have a bit more understanding, and then that's, I guess, less time of you trying to explain all that stuff to people and make it just a little bit more effective, the work you do.
Yeah.
And I've signed up for it. It's mainly targeted towards people who are wanting to go on that journey. I think it does say that it's suitable for instructors as well that have students that are going through the journey. But for people, is it made for women who are going through that journey themselves? Would you say that?
Yes. And I mean, if you're an instructor and you want to know more, there's definitely the modules that you can watch on the anatomy and physiology. And it's so good to know what a pregnant woman is going through or a postnatal woman is going through, because, you know, like like you said before, I had babies. I saw the mums that didn't like bouncing, and I was like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. And they're like, you don't understand.
Now I know. I'm like, oh, it is hard to jump. That's
yeah.
And I think it's just improving that education amongst instructors, because you go get your certificate, and then how much upkeep do you kind of do to that? So and most of the pole world are female.
Well,
whether or not they make the decision to have children, they're still female, and some of those things are still going to be relevant.
Well, say for example, any of the qualifications I've done have not involved any talk about pregnancy whatsoever.
So what pregnant people can't exercise? But no, it just shows there's a gap, and that's where this is a world first to be able to help gap that bridge.
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
I feel like we're going to have you back, because I feel like that was just a very high level overview.
Yeah. I didn't even look at my notes.
I know there's things I really want to dive into, but guys, and Phoebe, thank you for joining us today, and for the props.
No worries.
They are the best. If you guys want to see the props, you know where to go, onto YouTube. We hope if you are listening to this, you just got out that it is okay to be pregnant and pole, depending on your body, and it is okay for your journey to be your journey. Everybody is different. All our anatomy is different. So the same but different. If you want to check out Phoebe, we'll link all her stuff below. Where can they find you?
It's probably easier to go to my website, bumpfitness.com.au, but if you find me on Instagram, you can send me a message
and say hi. Excellent. Guys, if you want to watch the video and see the props, head over to YouTube and just type in Uncover for Pole Dancers. We're there. This will be up this week. We'll be talking all things pregnancy this week on Instagram, so come check us out at uncovered.pd. And if you have any questions, hit us up or hit Phoebe up, and we'll be sure to answer them. Until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.